You know what it is. You know
Hey,
who it is. We're back. BG Perform podcast with my co-host, Coach Jerry Hayes. Jerry, how
what's
are we feeling
up?
this week?
Oh, we're feeling good. Lifts are feeling good, except there's knot in my back. Needs to get the L out of here. It's
He's
just
got
pissing
none.
me off.
Yesterday he crushed some cyclist squats. It's probably
Dude,
from the. Were they front rack?
no, they weren't front rack. If they were front rack, then that would explain the feeling I'm having right now. But this has been like a small knot that I've had all my life that I always have to dig out. But I'm going to Lake Tahoe, which if you don't know where that is in California, it's beautiful. I'm going there this weekend, and I have a massage planned for Saturday. And
Ooh,
every time I roll my fingers over it, it's just I get
ain't
closer and
nothing like a
closer to
good
that.
rub down.
I need it.
Gonna be a good weekend.
Oh yeah, that'll be good.
So today we're going to talk about taking responsibility for your fitness. One of the big themes I see in life. Actually, I'm going to save this. I'm going to save this, and I don't want to waste time. We got a 30-minute AM tap. We're going to try to keep it under 30 minutes or just at 30 minutes. But if you've listened into this point, we're terrible at that.
We
So
are awful.
we're going to do our best. We're going to set a 30-minute clock. And we're gonna get this thing going. Any thoughts, comments, questions? Leave them in the comments. Three, two, one. Boom. All right.
Let's go.
Let's go. All right. So one of the things I constantly see in the world now is a lack of responsibility, right? And keeping this in our lane, in our domain, right? Fitness. I think one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves is take responsibility for our fitness, right? And you might be asking, well, what does that mean? How do I do that? And to me, it's fairly simple, right? It's putting yourself in a position where at the end of the day, there is nothing else that is stopping you from being fit except yourself, right? And this is something that helped me a ton when I first started working out, as I've progressed in my training, as I've, become this high level coach, however you want to describe it. And now as I've started training for this triathlon, right, is it's up to me, right? I can choose not to do it. I can choose to do it. There's no one forcing me. There's no one stopping me or making me do anything. The whole goal here is for me to enjoy fitness, enjoy my life, and live it to the highest ability that I can. And in my mind, that means taking responsibility and understanding that while there are tons of things that can get in the way of me doing this or accomplishing this, it's up to me to build the environment or put myself in the best position possible to become the fittest version of myself, right? And I've been in the industry now for, you know, literally, I always say 10 years because that's when I like started, like over 10 years, because that's when I started, and that's when I started losing weight and working out. But as a trainer, like a full-time trainer, it's been about 7 years. And, being a trainer for 7 years, Jerry, I know you can attest to this, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, have you ever heard the saying, if I had a nickel for every insert thing here, right? If I had a
Yeah.
nickel for every excuse that I've ever heard as to why someone's not training, I wouldn't need to personal train, right? I would still do it, but I wouldn't need to. So this is where the responsibility factor comes in. I think too many people let other things get in the way of them actually becoming fit. I understand fitness can be expensive. I understand fitness can be, you know, I don't want to say a nuisance, but like it can get in the way of scheduling and it can be inconvenient, right? Barely an inconvenience, but it can be an
Super
inconvenience.
easy, barely an inconvenience.
I didn't know that I'm assuming that's what that's from when you originally
That's
said.
yeah, that if you guys don't know what that is, it's pitch meetings. This guy Ryan George on YouTube does he used to be on Screen Rant, now he does his own thing and he has like this whole thing where he does fake pitch meetings where he like makes fun of movies by pitching it to a producer. Check it out. It's funny. Check it out.
I just heard him say it in a couple of the videos yesterday. I was like, that must be where it's from. But anyway,
It's like a catchphrase that people just expect to hear now.
yeah. So, it's one of those things where there's so many things that could be an inconvenience in your day. And we really have to sit down and take responsibility on ourselves and say, I'm not fit because of me, right? Or I'm not where I want to be physically because of me, or I'm not happy with my fitness because of me, right? And and this goes for all aspects of life, but really, like I said in the beginning, just us kind of keeping this in our zone. Hyper responsibility of your fitness is going to get you where you want to be, right? And I think that it's so important because nowadays there's just more and more. confusion and dragging and fear mongering and attention baiting, clickbaiting, that type of thing that's dragging us into the position where it's like fitness is so overwhelming and confusing and expensive and is complicated, and it's like why even do this, right? What do I need this for? And this is the part where it starts to get frustrating for me, is because I was in that position one time, right? And I remember when I first wanted to lose weight, I was so overwhelmed about what I needed to do and how I needed to do it that I was like, fuck, dude, I don't even know where to start. And we had this conversation a couple podcasts ago where you kind of get lost in it, and and you blame everything else. You blame the trainers, you blame the gyms, you blame the price, you blame the supplement companies, all this shit, and you end up not doing anything because you're blaming out all these other people, right? And I think at the end of the day, if you take a step back and realize like I am responsible for what I do, I am responsible for how I act, how I react, all that stuff. Fitness gets a lot more simple, right? If you can't make it to a gym, do it at home. If you can't pay for the gym, find a way to follow a program at home, right? There's so many options. What?
No, I was gonna say that's this is something that I talked about this past weekend. I was on my way home from my niece's soccer game. I
Okay.
don't know if you saw this on Instagram, but there was someone on a bicycle and they were
Oh, I
just
do remember.
biking, but then in front of them was like a lying down, almost like an attachment from the front wheel, and they were lying down in front of it, and they just had waist up, they had no legs, and they were pedaling like this on their back in the middle of the fucking intersection, just going with their buddy on the bicycle behind them. That takes some, that takes something. Like that's some guts to just be lying down where people can't see you and doing that. You can make all the excuses in the world, like, oh, I hurt my one part of my body, so I can't do this or that, when this person literally has no legs and they're making it a point to exercise and bike with their arms in the middle of the street.
Yeah,
So
and I
like
think
that was just so inspirational, and like I crushed my workout yesterday thinking about it.
well, it's as simple as that. It's just like when you see these things, right? And it's not, there are obviously physical limitations that occur. You get sick, things like that. But for the most part, I really do think people just taking responsibility for their fitness, because it
Hmm.
doesn't, that's a great example, but it doesn't just stop there, right? Like when I talk about responsibility of fitness, I talk about, again, the BG Perform guiding principles. Don't eat like an asshole. Don't
Hmm.
not train. Don't not move. Like we're not always going to have perfect situations, right? For me, I take so much responsibility in my life, and I've kind of like, I don't want to say no, because I don't think you can overdo it, but I've taken so much responsibility in every aspect of my life. And when I have, everything has always gotten better, right? Because what does that mean? That means at the end of the day, I can change it because it's up to me, right? If I don't have a gym, and I've been to plenty of places where we didn't have a gym, or I didn't have access to a place, or I didn't have a car, or the gym had weird hours, and I was like, all right, well, like this is gonna be a pain in the ass. I could have been like, oh, I'm not gonna work out. No, it's like, okay, well, I make it work. I figure it out. I wake up earlier. I do it at home. I just run. I like there's so many pieces of fitness that can be done. And I think that the biggest struggle is that when people don't take responsibility and start blaming everybody else for it, the gyms, like I said, that laundry list of things, it gets so much easier to not work out. And it's already easy enough to not work out. It's already easy enough to talk yourself out of doing difficult things. Like yesterday, I went on a run with Martin, my jujitsu instructor, and he's been training, doing some triathlon training with me. And there was every excuse for me to not fucking run yesterday. It was like 40 degrees. It was raining within the first 3 minutes. And when I say raining, it's England rain, which is not like it's fucking pissing outside, essentially. Within the first 3 minutes, I stepped in the biggest puddle and my feet were soaked. And
Mm.
like I said, it was raining and it was cold and I was getting soaked and I was exhausted. And literally within the first 3 minutes, not even a quarter mile in, my feet were soaked. And I was like, and I was
You
so
finish the run
angry.
with trench foot, you take off your shoes and
Literally.
socks, and your skin just comes off with it.
Oh my God. It was so bad and just so annoying. And like that wasn't the last one either. I was like, I stepped in that big first puddle, and then England's literally just like hills. It's literally just like this, the whole way. And like if they're not like that, they're straight roads that are just not roads. They're just like fucking gravel. and there's puddles everywhere, and we're stepping and going side to side, and it's raining, and I stepped in more puddles. And eventually I was just like, geez, like I was so angry and I was just running and I was finishing it. But it's like those types of things where every excuse in the book I could have used. There was every reason in the book I didn't have to run yesterday. I talked to Ian and Layla before, and Ian's like, this psycho is gonna go run in the rain. He's gonna get sick. And I was like, nah, I'm gonna be fine. I'm gonna be fine. It's just everything.
Nothing could go wrong.
Nothing could go wrong. And that's the type of thing where I take responsibility because I know at the end of the day, for me, it matters more than it's not just a run, it's not just a workout. To me, it's a conversation with myself and winning that little battle to get through it, right? Because that's to a lot of people that seems like a big thing, right? And you can focus on the numbers, the 5 miles, whatever it might be. But the fact that I won that battle at that point and was like, nah, we're doing it. We're finishing it. We're going through it with wet, soggy feet, soaked. I was wearing all cotton. All my
Mhm.
sweatshirt and sweatpants were drenched because it was raining. Not to mention Martin's way faster than me. So he had us running like 730 miles. And like that's yeah, I'm not a runner, right? And yeah, so
You're a runner. Oh, you're a runner, all right.
I'm not. I'm not. Those 730
You are
miles.
now.
Fucking I guess
Running
so.
like that?
I guess so. But yeah, so it's like these are the types of things where you have to take responsibility because at the end of the day, there are so many excuses. There are so many things that are going to get in the way, but it's our responsibility to take what we have in fitness and use it. And you know, yeah, I mean, I want to go in another direction with this in a minute, but I want to give you a chance to talk and if there's anything you want to add to this. But I think,
Yeah,
yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's responsibility.
I have those days a lot too. Like even today, I have three options of workouts that I could do based on my usual weekly format. So I could either hit my push pull today, my horizontal push pull, so a little bit of chest and back. But with this knot in my shoulder, I literally can't even like I coughed earlier and almost collapsed. Like it's so fucking bad. It hurts so bad. So I was thinking like, all right, maybe not today, just because like even retracting my like depressing and retracting my scapulae, it just feels like I already feel weak. So I was like, yeah, that's like a shoulder injury waiting to happen. I know my body. Maybe today we box. So I got up here and I started like moving and I was like, that does not feel good at all. So we're not doing that today. So I think today I'm gonna become a runner and just do that because I need to do something. I just hit legs yesterday. It'll be a good way to kind of get some blood flow to him, heal
Yeah.
him a little bit. But I like it's not like I'm gonna be like, okay, my shoulder hurts, so now I have to stop. I'm gonna find something to do because I know that it's important to me. It's and Brandon and I talk about it all the time, like influencing the highest standard of coaching. You as a coach need to practice what you preach. So
Yeah.
as we're telling you, don't just stop and just call it for the day. We are trying to do the same thing. We're figuring out what can we do instead if one thing isn't working out.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I just couldn't imagine myself not pushing through those moments and then going to somebody else and be like, push through those moments, right? Like
Yeah, what
just
a
such a
snake oil salesman.
like it just
Freaking,
makes me I hate even thinking about it. But
what a
anyways,
charlatan.
I wanted to transition a little bit because my main reason about talking about this is like as I mentioned before, in the world right now, there is so much confusion and misdirection and misguiding and poor leadership from people at the top of the industry and people who have a big following and people who are influencing decisions, right? And I think that when we really look at what's going on in fitness, it's driving people daily to second guess their fitness, which is absurd because like with I, and this is personally right when I see the state of how the pharmaceutical industry is right now, when I see the state of what they push and how they, they market things, and we obviously I'm not going to go into detail here, but they go they market things, and then the way that doctors just don't ever really recommend anything, and none of the doctors actually take care of themselves, and prescription medication is just pushed and pushed and pushed. It's in my eyes, the more responsibility you can take for yourself and your fitness, and the less you can leave to these people and industries, the better your life's going to be, honestly, because like you get dragged And it leads to so many different things where it's like you go to the doctor, then you get sucked into the insurance part of it. You go to the doctor and then you get sucked into the pharmaceutical side of it. You go to the doctor and then you get sucked into, whatever other aspects there are of it. And it's never just one thing, right? And then it's like you go to the doctor, you get sucked into the pharmaceutical side of it. You have to go take medication. There's side effects to these medications. And in reality, 90% of all of the problems we have physically in the world and mentally in the world could probably be solved by good exercise and nutrition, right? And I think that if we continue to not take responsibility for our fitness and our health, we give more power to these people who are just itching to grab more, right? They're just like, boom, if I can, as much as I can take handfuls and handfuls. And you get these people who just don't have any responsibility in their fitness and they'd have no ideas, no way of thinking, no concepts, nothing. And they listen to whatever gets put up. And if you start to listen to everything that gets put up, by the time you're done listening to everything, you're going to be right back where you started with even more questions, to be honest, you know? And even as myself as a trainer, I've had some times where I'm listening to stuff and I'm like, wait, like I thought one thing and then I listen to it and then I do some research and I'm like, it's like I ask more questions than I answer, right? So for me, I took responsibility not only for my fitness, like my physical fitness, but my mental health as well, my mental fitness, by eliminating stuff, eliminating the amount of people I listen to, eliminating the pieces of information that I take in on a weekly, daily, hourly, minute basis every single day, right? And this is where it really starts to come in, where it's like your health, obviously, the physical side of it for the most part is relatively easy. And I think it's the most fun part for people, right? Because there's so many options in fitness, Pilates, boxing, jujitsu, lifting, powerlifting, bodybuilding, running, hybrid, high rocks, triathlon, like, and that's just to name a few, rock climbing, like all these things are fitness based, right? And as long as you're doing something physical on a daily basis, you're going to get better, right? And this is what's going to help us improve the other aspects of our life. Where we also need to take responsibility for, because health encompasses everything, is the information we take in, the information we put out, where we kind of who we listen to, why we listen to them. Do they actually have our best interests in mind? Are we asking questions? Are we just being like a follower in some of these cases? And it's hard, right? It's very hard because you don't know. You don't know what you're listening to. You don't know who you're listening to. A lot of times you're listening to people based on you know, you're basing what you're listening to on appearance, right? Someone looks like they have a six pack, they must know what they're talking about. Someone looks a certain way genetically, they must know what they're talking about, right? And it's really hard because, again, fitness is, I don't want to say it's a guessing game because it's not. We have a lot of information now that gives us a lot of good info, like feedback. But fitness, for the most part, is this constant adjusting and retesting and completing and retesting and what's the word I'm looking for? I can't remember the word I'm looking for.
Experiment,
Yeah, I guess experiment.
experimenting.
Like experimenting, completing it, then retesting it, right? And I think where we lack sometimes is people don't have enough information or research to ask the right questions, and then everything people say is just fact, right? And I think it's again, and this is where I keep coming back to the word responsibility, because for me, this has been a word that's repeatedly been in my life in so many other aspects. It's responsibility of my fitness, meaning I control my fitness, right? And I can choose to do when I want, where I want, how I want. Responsibility in my mental health, meaning what I take in, how I perceive it, how I go about that process. That's up to me, right? It's not up to anybody else. Me and you have had this conversation a bunch of times where it's like I text Jerry angry about something that I've seen on TikTok, and he's like, "Bro, you're letting social media like get you angry." And I'm like, "Fuck, you're right." Right. And I think like, for me, that's something where I really have to sit down and look and be like, this is there for a reason. It's trying to gauge a response out of me. It's trying to get me to respond or think or act in a certain way. And I have to take responsibility for that. If I let that happen, that's my fault. Right. I can blame TikTok and blame the algorithms and all this shit all I want. But at the end of the day, it's my fault for sitting there listening to it and then giving it meaning in my life, even though it has no meaning in my life, right? And I think this is where it's so important for us as coaches to be the beacon of light in those ways, and be at the forefront and understand this stuff and put ourselves through it and understand responsibility and be a little bit, on the extreme end of what we do, right? Because I don't think, at least in my eyes, I don't think people necessarily want to have the career or the schedule that I have, right? Maybe they do in theory, but like, and the grand scheme of things, maybe they don't, right? But what I do is because I love what I do, and I drive myself to almost be an experiment of this stuff, an experiment of taking hyper responsibility of my fitness, my mental and physical health, or taking hyper responsibility for myself as a coach, being that standard, setting that standard, holding that standard every single day. This idea of daily discipline, this idea of understanding like every day that I wake up, I'm going to be the best version of myself, right? And I don't say this as bragging, but it's one of those things where I made a commitment to myself this past couple months ago, right? Like when I went home in July after Ian's last fight, and I sat down, I was like, I need to level up in so many ways, right? And if I really want to kind of chase what I want to do, and to me, that meant I have to be an outlier. I can't be, my schedule, a product of my schedule. I can't be a product of the people and the places that I may be around. It doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means at the end of the day, whatever that standard is that I want, I have to hold myself to that regardless of the people that are around me, right? And that's again my responsibility. That means no matter who's around me, I got to train. No matter who's around me, I got to learn. No matter who's around me, I got to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable in all of these pieces, right? And it's hard when you're by yourself. And it's hard when you're traveling and you don't have certain things, or you don't have a base, or you don't have a lot of things to right in your like area, right? Like right in your grasp. But the whole point of this is that this is discipline. This is responsibility. This is, I chose this life. I asked for this, and this is what I'm getting for it. And this is great, right? And this is what's the beautiful thing about it is when you take responsibility, you start to actually get the things that you want because you make the right decisions and you understand like, you know, if I gained 10 pounds tomorrow, that's my fault. I could blame the market for having good food, right? Which is what most people do. But at the end of the day, I did it. I put it in my mouth, I consumed it, I ate it, right? I can complain that my jujitsu is not getting better, which I tend to do a lot, and I haven't been there in 2 weeks, right? And it's like, yeah, obviously, like it's my fault. I haven't been there. I haven't trained as much. These people are training every single day. Obviously, I'm gonna feel like shit when I get ragdolled for no reason, right? And these are the types of things where it's like that hyper responsibility, that taking that time to sit down and be like, this is me, this is my fault. And it's not even my fault, like it's a bad thing, but like this happened because of me, but this can also change because of me. I can adjust because of me. I can learn because of me. And that's where the responsibility really kind of comes back and can be very powerful in a lot of ways. Because if you let it be uh drag you down, like yeah, I have responsibility, right? But responsibility means I can create anything I want. I have purpose. I can drive into that next level of everything that I want to do, especially in my fitness and my mental health, right? A lot of people take responsibility as a negative thing and they let it drag them down, and they're like, responsibility means I got to make decisions. Responsibility means I have to be held accountable. Responsibility means I have to hold myself to a standard, and some people don't want that, right? And that's okay. It's just that at the end of the day, you can't not take the responsibility, and then ask for something else in return, right? You have to be okay with the outcomes if you're allowing everything else to be controlled by someone else. Anything to add to that?
No, I mean, you pretty much covered it all. I just kept coming into this this analogy of like the group project, and when you get assigned the people who don't carry their weight, and it's just like that's when like you're not in a group project. Like in a group project, if it goes wrong, you could be like, well, they didn't do their thing.
Mhm.
They didn't do their thing. When it's a solo project, you're the only one doing it. You can't be like, well, my classmates didn't they yeah, it's your fault at that point, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same reason that when you wake up and you choose to make your bed or brush your teeth or journal or make that cup of coffee, like your first step that you choose is based on you alone because it's it's what you're going to do. So when you decide I'm not going to work out today or I'm not feeling it, it's not anyone else's choice. It's yours. And again, you pretty much covered it all, but I think getting yourself out of the blame game is the biggest thing you could do for yourself with fitness.
Yeah, and I think like you mentioned a good point. Now I'm forgetting what it was. You just said repeat the last couple sentences. What'd you say?
Group project. When you get out of bed and you make your first steps, whether it's making a cup of coffee, making your bed, brushing your teeth, you can't
Mm,
blame anybody else. Getting rid of the blame game. Before that,
I'll just redo the
I
whole
don't remember.
podcast.
Yeah, just scrap it. We're at 0 minutes. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? You know what it is. You
Um,
know who it is.
no, you know what it is. You know who it is.
Oh,
Don't
my
get me
bad. My
wrong.
bad. My bad. My bad.
So I think it'll come up to me, but I think at the end of the day, the responsibility piece. Oh, that's what it was. So like, I don't say this because I don't want people to take this as like you have to have this psychotic schedule or you have to have this crazy living experience and you have to like jump off of mountains and you have to, run triathlons and you have to do these crazy training things, right? What I say this as is like you take the life you want, right? And whether it be physical, whether it be mental, whether it be a family, whatever it is, you take these goals that you have. And at the end of the day, they're up to you to achieve. If you don't achieve them, that's fine, right? Like you don't have to live a certain life just because someone, says that's the life they live, right? Like I don't expect people to want to live the way that I live. But what I expect is if you don't choose the way to live the way that I live, don't tell me how to live, right? And also don't complain if you don't have the things that you want. I see too many people who don't take responsibility. They don't do anything for themselves. They don't try to make their lives better. They don't take responsibility for the way that they act and the way they make decisions. And then they're like, well, I don't have XYZ. And it's like, of course not. Like, why would you? Like there's no reason why you should. Some people get, relatively get lucky, but I think also luck in that side of things and some of this, whether it be genetic, whether it be whatever it might be, I think it runs its course very quickly. I think people who get quote unquote lucky in this game or in general, it runs its course. And most people who get lucky don't have the background, they don't have the skills, they don't have the ability, they don't have the discipline, they don't have the responsibility to actually maintain it for long periods of time, right? Think about the kid in high school who used to be like, "Oh, I could eat anything whenever, wherever." And then you see them in 30 years and they're, they got a beer gut and, all this shit's going on. You don't have a beer gut though.
If I eat dairy, I do.
That's that's more like a
If I eat
gas.
dairy, I look real Irish. It's crazy.
But anyway, like this whole thing is, like I said, it's just the responsibility aspect of it is whatever you want in life, you can achieve it. You can hear all the cliche sayings, right? But it really just comes down to taking responsibility and saying like, "Hey, I want to be better, and it's up to me, and I'm not going to let anybody get in my way. If people do get in my way, I'm going to choose to get them out of there or just ignore them, and I'm going to choose the next best step, right?" And if you're not doing that, you're not taking responsibility, you're not choosing to make those steps, then just you can't complain. You can't sit there and say like, "Oh, I don't have what I want. I'm upset." Right? Until you take hyper responsibility, until you decide that at that point, like even if it's after listening to this podcast, if you listen to this and you're like, "Hey, I need to think on this," and then it kind of hits you, because that's what it does it's always done that for me, right? Whenever I felt like I'm lost, whenever I felt like I'm not achieving the things that I want to achieve or feeling the way that I want to feel, it's always accompanied by this, oh, because of this, oh, because of this, and maybe because of where I'm at, maybe because of who I'm with, maybe because of this and that. And at the end of the day, again, it's my fault, right? It's my responsibility to speak up, say the things that I need in certain situations with certain people around certain scenarios and be better. That's all. Right. And at the end of the day, that's all I'm trying to say here is like, if you can take responsibility for that stuff and truly understand it, then everything feels better. It feels so much more fulfilling. It feels so much more easy to comprehend and understand. And you live a really, in my mind, you live a better and more fulfilled life.
I Another point on that too is when you think about taking responsibility, there, like you said in the very beginning of the podcast, there's so much information on the internet. especially Instagram, I feel like every day I come across somebody who's saying some BS, and you look at the comments and like people are starting to call it out more, which is
Mhm.
exactly what you should do. Obviously, don't just be a troll in the comments and be like, "You're wrong." But like when you see something that is questionable and you're like, "I don't know, I've heard a couple different kind of points on this topic before." Do your own research. Get off of the reel, go to Google, find or maybe like a trusted source that you have, whether it's us
Or
or
do
another
it.
person in the
Fucking
industry.
do it. See if it
Or
works.
yeah,
Like this is like,
exactly.
like this is one of my biggest pet peeves is like when this shit comes up, you get these people who are just spewing nonsense because none of them actually do it. Like, and this is one of the things that, and sorry to cut you off, but like this is one of the biggest things right now on Instagram that bugs me is that people are saying shit that they've never actually done or never experienced or never had to go through. And it's so easy to talk and spew information, right? But when you actually sit down, like anything that I put out there or that I talk about is stuff that I've experienced or that I've done or I've if not if I haven't done it myself, I've at least tested on enough people that I've seen that it works, right? Because there's
Hmm.
something that I just haven't tried for whatever reason, like personally on in a program or like diet wise or whatever. But for the most part, the information you see nowadays is because people don't actually train. They do stuff for Instagram and they'll do their, fake little workouts and whatnot, and they'll post information because no one's calling them out and because it's how the world works. You can put out information and not be double checked, you know what I mean?
Yeah, just make sure you're doing like actually research things yourself and fact check. Even on stuff that we say, fact check us, send us a message, be like, "Hey, I found this."
Yeah,
We welcome it because we're not spewing bullshit. We're actually going to talk to you guys about
yeah,
things that are true and things that work.
yeah. And I think we've said multiple times in the past, only Siths speak in absolutes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think we did really good on that. 30 twenty
We
four.
got 30-24. Not too bad.
I think this is a good place to end it. I don't really have anything else to add to it. I think, for me, like I said, take hyper responsibility. Don't let anything else get in your way. I think that we have such a great opportunity right now with so much information and so much ability to complete things. And I think we need to really take advantage of that. And yeah, it really just starts with that conversation of taking hyper responsibility of what you're doing and not letting other people get in the way. So, any last second things?
No, sir. No, sir.
All right. I think that's it for this week. This is probably our best one yet. 30, we'll say 30-24 was the
Thirty
and
twenty four. We're just recapping. We
yeah,
got our AMTAP done.
yeah, yeah.
That was the summary.
We will yeah, we'll get this posted. We'll get this up. If you guys ever have any questions, obviously hit us up on Instagram at @BGPerform_ at Coach Jerry Hayes. And yeah, we will continue this thing. And we will see you guys next time.